Most people think avoidants are cold, detached, uncaring, but what they confess in therapy tells an entirely different story, one that rarely sees the light of day in their relationships. What they say behind closed doors isn't rejection, it's protection, and not just from others, but from themselves. When an avoidant sits across from a therapist, something cracks. The armor slips, and what comes out is often shocking. They'll tell you, I want love, deeply, desperately, but I'm terrified of needing it. That fear doesn't come from logic, it comes from old wounds. Somewhere along the line, they learned that needing others leads to disappointment, to pain, to abandonment. So they built lives around not needing anyone. Hyper-independence isn't pride, it's a scar. They've convinced themselves that to want is to weaken. And that belief shapes everything they hide from their partners. I want love, but I'm terrified of needing it. It sounds like a contradiction, but for someone with an avoidant attachment style, it's the most honest sentence they can offer. It reveals a war between longing and fear, a desire to be close, wrapped in a lifelong instinct to stay far away. Love feels like the thing they crave most, yet the moment it starts to feel real, they pull away, not because they don't care, but because caring feels dangerous. For many avoidants, needing someone feels like giving up control. It feels like surrendering a piece of themselves, and the truth is, that's something they've learned never to do. Often, it traces back to childhood, where expressing needs didn't result in comfort, but in rejection, neglect, or being shamed. They were taught, directly or indirectly, that vulnerability leads to disappointment. So they built lives around invulnerability. They became fiercely independent, reliable, capable, admirably self-contained. But behind that strength is an unspoken belief. If I depend on someone, I'll get hurt. So they don't. Or at least they try not to. They keep their relationships at a safe emotional distance. Even if everything looks close from the outside, they might say the right things, do the right things, show up when it counts. But inside, they're always calculating how much of themselves they can give without crossing that invisible threshold where needing someone starts to feel like a threat. The worst part is they do need people, and they know it. That's the pain they carry in silence. In therapy, they admit they want closeness. They want to feel safe in someone's arms. They want to trust that if they fall, someone will catch them. But when those needs surface, so does panic. The desire for connection is instantly followed by fear of dependence. And so the pattern begins the moment someone starts to matter too much, they back away. They pick fights. They withdraw. They become cold. Not because they've stopped loving, but because they've started feeling too much. They're terrified that needing someone means they'll become powerless, that it will put them in the same position they swore they'd never be in again, exposed, vulnerable, at the mercy of another person's choices. Even when a partner gives them no reason to worry, their nervous system reacts like danger is around the corner. And because this fear doesn't always make logical sense, they rarely talk about it. Instead, they convince themselves they're just not ready, or that their partner is too needy, or that they're better off alone. It's easier than confronting the truth that closeness terrifies them even when they want it. The people who love avoidance often get caught in the middle of this contradiction. They feel the push and pull, the hot and cold, the moments of connection, followed by sudden withdrawal, and it's confusing. Sometimes even heartbreaking. But what partners don't see is the inner battle playing out, where love whispers, lean in, but fear screams, run, saying, I'm terrified of needing love isn't a refusal to connect. It's a confession of how high the stakes feel. For avoidance, to need someone is to hand over power, to risk heartbreak, to re-enter a space that once felt unsafe. And unless that fear is named, understood, and slowly worked through, it will keep winning. But once they begin to unlearn those beliefs, once they start seeing that needing others doesn't mean weakness, it means trust, something shifts. Slowly, their heart learns what their mind couldn't believe for years. That love doesn't have to be a threat, that needing someone isn't giving up control, it's choosing to be known, and that's not a flaw. It's the beginning of real connection. I replay every vulnerable moment, wishing I could undo it. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, vulnerability isn't freeing. It's terrifying. While others might feel relief after opening up, avoidants often spiral into regret. What feels like a moment of courage in real time becomes, in hindsight, a perceived mistake. They can't stop thinking about what they said, how they said it, and what it might have revealed. That replay button in their mind gets stuck, and the loop is brutal. They analyze every word, every expression, every shift in tone, wondering if they gave away too much, looked too weak, or broke some internal rule they live by. Don't let anyone see the cracks. The irony is these vulnerable moments are often subtle. A comment about missing someone, a tear they didn't hide in time, an admission that something hurt more than they let on. Most people wouldn't even notice it as a big deal. But for an avoidant, it feels like they exposed their innermost self. And that kind of exposure is unbearable. They fear being judged, pitied, or worse, rejected. So even after the moment has passed, the shame lingers. This isn't about pride. It's about survival. Vulnerability wasn't safe for them growing up. Maybe when they expressed hurt, they were ignored. Maybe when they cried, they were told to toughen up. Maybe when they reached out, no one reached back. So they learned to internalize everything, to perform strength, to keep emotions out of sight. Vulnerability became associated with danger, not connection. And even as adults in loving relationships, that old script still plays out. After a vulnerable moment, they don't feel closer to the person they opened up to. They feel exposed, anxious, unstable. And their first instinct is usually to withdraw. It's not that they don't trust their partner. It's that they don't trust the part of themselves that let the guard down. They feel out of control, as if the emotions got the best of them, and now they have to clean up the mess by retreating back into emotional silence. What follows is often self-criticism. Why did I say that? I should have kept that to myself. I made it weird. They're not just replaying the moment, they're rewriting it with judgment. In their mind, it's never a moment of brave connection. It's a slip up, a failure. And so instead of learning that vulnerability leads to intimacy, they reinforce the belief that vulnerability leads to discomfort and regret. This cycle is exhausting for them and for their partner. The person who received their honesty might be moved, grateful, or more connected. But the avoidant doesn't absorb that feedback. Instead, they focus on how emotionally unsafe they now feel. It becomes harder to be consistent, harder to stay emotionally present. And over time, these replays build into a quiet resolve. Better to say nothing next time. Better to play it safe. What avoidants often don't realize is that their vulnerability isn't a problem. It's a bridge. But when they keep walking halfway across and then running back, they never get to experience the reward on the other side. True intimacy, mutual understanding, and emotional safety that gets stronger with each moment of truth. Undoing this internal loop takes time. It takes learning to sit with the discomfort after opening up and resist the urge to retreat. It takes recognizing that the shaky feeling that comes after vulnerability is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of healing. The mind replays what it doesn't feel safe holding. So the work isn't to erase the moment. It's to learn how to hold it without shame. To trust that being seen isn't something to fear. It's something to value. I push them away because I'm scared they'll leave first. It sounds backward, counterintuitive even. But for many avoidantly attached people, this is the unspoken logic that runs their relationships. They don't push people away because they don't care. They push them away because they care too much, and that care brings risk. To love someone deeply is to give them the power to hurt you. To attach is to become vulnerable. And for someone who equates vulnerability with pain or abandonment, that's a terrifying equation. In the early stages of connection, things often feel safe, fun, low stakes. But as the emotional closeness deepens, so does the fear. The fear that the other person will eventually see their flaws and walk away. The fear that one wrong move will be enough to be rejected. The fear that the relationship, like so many in the past, will eventually end, and it'll hurt even more because they let someone in. Rather than risk that pain, the avoidant mind tries to get ahead of it. Push first. Detach first. End things emotionally before they're ended for them. It doesn't always look like a breakup. Sometimes it's more subtle. A sudden coldness after a moment of closeness. A sarcastic comment meant to create distance. A shift in energy that says, I don't get too comfortable with me. These behaviors are often confusing for the partner. One minute they feel seen and wanted, and the next they feel shut out. What they don't realize is that this withdrawal is rarely about them. It's a self-protective reflex. Avoidants often live with the deep belief that love is conditional, that it can be taken away at any moment. That no matter how good things seem, it's only a matter of time before the rug gets pulled out. So they start pulling the rug themselves. Not because they want to end things, but because it feels less painful to leave than to be left. It's not cruelty, it's preemptive grief management. Underneath this pattern is a fragile nervous system wired for survival, not connection. Early on, they may have learned that relationships are unpredictable. That closeness comes with strings, expectations, or betrayal. So they developed a habit of staying one emotional step ahead. If things feel too good, they question it. If someone gets too close, they create space. Not because they want to ruin it, but because they're trying to manage the pain they assume is coming. They may even test their partner, pulling away to see if they'll follow. Saying something harsh to see if the other person still stays. It's not fair, and it's not conscious most of the time. But the underlying question is always the same. Will you still want me if I stop performing? Will you stay if I'm messy, distant, afraid? The tragedy is they don't give their partner a chance to answer. They assume the worst and act accordingly. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The partner feels pushed out, confused, and eventually exhausted. They might leave, not because they stopped caring, but because they stopped feeling welcome. And the avoidant, once again, is left with the proof they were expecting to see. People leave. But what they don't see is that their fear drove the very outcome they were trying to avoid. Breaking this cycle isn't easy. It requires acknowledging the fear of abandonment that lives underneath the armor. It means allowing themselves to stay connected even when the stakes feel high. It means resisting the urge to push away and instead sitting in the discomfort of intimacy. Letting someone stay. Letting someone love them even when it feels dangerous, because not everyone leaves. But if they keep pushing people away to avoid pain, they'll never find the one who stays long enough to prove them wrong. I mistake comfort for danger. Most people long for comfort in relationships. The feeling of safety, being known, being understood. But for someone with avoidant attachment, comfort can be deeply confusing. What feels calm to their partner can feel threatening to them. When someone is consistently kind, emotionally available, and doesn't play games, their nervous system doesn't interpret it as security. It reads it as a setup, a trap. Something is too easy, too good, too safe, and therefore it must not be real. This confusion often begins in childhood, where safety was inconsistent or conditional. If love came with strings, if affection was mixed with control, if warmth was unpredictable or followed by withdrawal, then the avoidant child learned to associate closeness with tension. They were trained emotionally to prepare for the other shoe to drop. As adults, this wiring doesn't just disappear. It shapes how they perceive comfort, not as something to enjoy, but as something to doubt. When a relationship feels peaceful, the avoidant may start searching for hidden flaws. Why aren't we fighting more? Are they pretending? Are they going to leave once they see who I really am? Their mind becomes a battlefield of suspicion, not because their partner has done anything wrong, but because stillness is unfamiliar. They may even provoke distance just to feel like they're on solid ground again. Chaos, tension, emotional distance. These are the emotional environments they know how to navigate. Peace, on the other hand, leaves them unarmed. This can be heartbreaking for their partner. Being kind, consistent, and present starts to feel like it backfires. Instead of drawing the avoidant closer, it pushes them away. They may seem bored, detached, irritated, not because they want conflict, but because they don't know what to do with the absence of it. Love without drama feels like a foreign language. And when you've spent your life learning that love equals anxiety, peace doesn't feel romantic, it feels fake. The avoidant doesn't always realize they're doing this. They might say they're not feeling it anymore, that something is missing, that the spark is gone. What they're actually feeling is a lack of anxiety, and they mistake that for disconnection. They don't realize that healthy love often feels quiet, stable, even a little uneventful. It doesn't mean there's no passion. It means the passion isn't tied to fear, uncertainty, or pursuit. And for someone used to surviving on emotional adrenaline, that shift feels like withdrawal. Deep down, the avoidant often wants to trust the calm. They want to let go of the hypervigilance, the suspicion, the inner alarms that go off when someone gets too close. But it takes reprogramming. It takes time to teach their body that stillness isn't a threat. That someone being good to them doesn't mean they're being manipulated. That showing up every day isn't a trick, it's love in motion. Real comfort requires presence. It requires slowing down. And for avoidance, that's terrifying. Because when they slow down, all the feelings they've outrun start to catch up. Doubts, grief, old fears. Things they've buried under emotional independence begin to surface. And so they run again. Not from their partner, but from their own unprocessed pain. But if they stay, if they allow themselves to sit in the quiet and let it feel strange, something beautiful begins to happen. The body starts to relax. The mind stops scanning for danger. The heart starts to believe that love doesn't have to come wrapped in tension. That maybe, just maybe, comfort isn't a warning sign. It's the thing they've been searching for all along. I don't share my needs because I don't believe they'll be met. This isn't apathy. It's not pride. It's not selfishness. It's self-protection, deep, practiced, and often unconscious. For someone with avoidant tendencies, not expressing needs isn't a passive behavior. It's a survival strategy. They learned early on that voicing what they needed, emotionally or otherwise, often led to disappointment, dismissal, or even punishment. Over time, that disappointment calcified into a belief, don't ask, it's safer that way, so they stopped asking. They stopped reaching out even in moments of pain or confusion. They became the person who said, I'm fine, even when they weren't. The person who powered through things alone because trusting someone to show up felt like setting themselves up to fail. And when they enter relationships, they carry that old wiring with them. Their partner might sense that something's wrong, but here, nothing. They might notice the avoidant pulling away, but be told, I just need space. And sometimes that's true. But many times, the avoidant is silently suffering, unable or unwilling to articulate what they need. Not because they don't want to be close, but because they've convinced themselves it's useless. They've already written the ending. They won't get it. They'll think I'm too much. They'll let me down. And ironically, this silence often creates the very disconnection they fear. Their partner feels shut out, confused, or even rejected. But the avoidant isn't trying to reject their partner. They're rejecting the risk. The risk of being misunderstood. The risk of hoping and being let down. The risk of needing too much and being labeled as needy. To them, it's easier to keep the need inside than face the vulnerability of exposing it. But unspoken needs don't disappear. They just harden. They often resurface as resentment, frustration, or sudden withdrawal. A partner might feel blindsided by what seems like a disproportionate reaction. But beneath it is a backlog of unmet needs that were never voiced in the first place. The avoidant has been keeping score silently, all while telling themselves, of course they didn't meet my needs. I never expected them to. This is the quiet tragedy of avoidance. The inner world is full of longing, but the outer world is a mask of indifference. They may want affection, reassurance, attention, closeness. But instead of asking, they wait. They wait to see if their partner will read their mind. They wait to be chosen without having to ask. And when that doesn't happen, it confirms their belief a C. This is why I don't ask. The truth is, most avoidants are not emotionally numb. They are emotionally guarded. They feel deeply but have been trained not to show it. And unlearning that training takes more than just being in a healthy relationship. It takes intentional, sometimes painful, inner work. Work that begins with recognizing that having needs doesn't make them weak. It makes them human. They have to learn that asking is not a guarantee of disappointment. That expressing a need is not a burden, but a bridge. That vulnerability might feel dangerous, but it's also the only way to build intimacy that's real. And that the right partner won't just tolerate their needs, they'll honor them. When an avoidant begins to trust that their needs can be heard and met, something shifts. They speak up more, they soften, they let their guard down, not because they've stopped fearing pain, but because they've decided connection is worth the risk. And in that choice, they start rewriting the story they've told themselves for years, and maybe someone not will show up for me. Maybe I can be known and still be safe. I want to let them in, but I never learned how. This isn't just a sentence, it's a silent ache. It's the inner conflict avoidants rarely say out loud, but one that defines so many of their relationships. There is desire, there is longing, there is even love. But there's also fear, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of not knowing what to do with any of it. When someone gets close, really close, an avoidant doesn't just feel exposed, they feel lost. It's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that no one ever taught them how to stay in it once it starts to feel real. Growing up, emotional connection might have been conditional, inconsistent, or unsafe. Maybe being vulnerable led to ridicule. Maybe emotions were treated as weakness. Maybe the people they depended on were unreliable or overwhelming. So survival meant self-sufficiency. It meant becoming the one who doesn't need, who doesn't ask, who doesn't get hurt. And when you practice that for years, it stops feeling like a strategy and starts feeling like your identity. Now, as an adult, they find themselves in relationships that require the very skills they never had the chance to develop: emotional openness, presence, vulnerability, closeness. And the thing they long for most is also the thing that makes them feel most unequipped. Letting someone in isn't as simple as saying, "I love you." It's showing up emotionally, even when it's hard. It's being seen in all your mess, your moods, your moments of insecurity, and staying anyway. And that's terrifying when no one ever showed you how. They try in their own ways. They might offer acts of service, physical presence, consistency, anything that lets their partner know, "I care," but when it comes time to open up emotionally to share what's happening inside, they freeze, or deflect, or change the subject, because they don't know how to let someone stand in the room with their fears, their doubts, their wounds. It's not that they don't trust the person, it's that they don't trust themselves to survive that kind of exposure. This creates confusion, both for them and their partner. They may say they want closeness, but then act distant. They may seem fully present one day and completely withdrawn the next. To the outside world, it looks like emotional inconsistency. But on the inside, it's a constant negotiation between wanting to connect and not knowing how to stay open without feeling overwhelmed. They often carry guilt about this, shame even, because they see how their walls affect the people they love. They see the confusion in their partner's eyes. They feel the growing distance, and they want to bridge that gap. They just don't know how. The tools that come naturally to others, talking through feelings, asking for reassurance, staying present through emotional tension, feel foreign and uncomfortable. But the desire is real. They don't want to keep people at arm's length. They're just used to emotional self-preservation being their default. And changing that requires more than good intentions. It requires unlearning, rewiring, small, repeated acts of courage. It means sitting with discomfort instead of running from it. It means expressing one feeling instead of holding it all in. It means trusting bit by bit that not every moment of openness will end in pain. Eventually, with time, patience, and the right support, they begin to learn that letting someone in doesn't mean losing control. It means gaining connection. That emotional closeness doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. And that they don't need to know how to do it flawlessly. They just need to start trying. Because the moment they stop protecting themselves from love is the moment they finally start receiving it.